All right. Welcome to our class on Exodus. And I wanted to give us a review beforehand. Okay. So, and guys, if you want to stay off mute, we want the most participation. So if that helps, then you don't have to mute yourselves unless we start hearing a lot of feedback. Okay. All right. So in review, how many books are there in the Bible?
66 is same as was last time.
Yeah, same. Dan said same as last time. 66. Okay. How many of those are in the Old Testament?
39.
39. Very good. How many does that leave in the New Testament?
27.
Are y'all guessing? I don't hear y'all guessing on that.
That sounds like math. I don't do that.
Okay. All right. And last week we talked about the book of Genesis. And so who can tell me who Abraham's descendants were? Like, who were the main patriarchs that descended from Abraham?
Isaac.
Well, Jacob.
Isaac, Jacob. And who were Jacob's descendants?
The 12 tribes.
The 12 tribes. Yeah. So whose name got changed to Israel?
Jacob.
Jacob. Okay. All right. Everybody tracking? Right? Okay. I won't make you name the 12 sons.
Joseph.
But Joseph was the next name, wasn't he? So he got a lot of attention in there. All right. So good job. Okay. And also at the end of Genesis, where were Jacob's family? Where did they live?
Egypt.
Anybody else going to confirm that?
Egypt.
Okay, thank you. They lived in Egypt. And why did they go to Egypt?
Famine.
Okay. So there was a famine in the Promised Land. So they'd been to the Promised Land, and there was a famine there. And so they went to, and why was there food in Egypt?
Because Joseph interpreted the dreams of the Pharaoh, and he knew there was going to be a famine, so he told the Pharaoh, and the Pharaoh stored up food, and he put Joseph in charge of it.
Very cool. A+, right?
Yay.
Good job. All right.
Gave Pharaoh the dream.
God.
God, that's the Sunday school answer. God. Okay. All right. So tonight we're going to start the book of Exodus, and it picks up with all of God's people still living in Egypt. Okay. And so, so that's an important thing for us to remember. And so we're going to, I'm going to do a little screen share here. Figure out how to, there we go. Is that a picture that you associate with Exodus?
With Charlton Heston.
Yeah, with Charlton Heston. He was not actually Moses, though, right?
I can prove that.
But does that mean Moses didn't look like him?
No, that doesn't mean. Wouldn't that be cool to get to heaven and we can see if Moses looks anything like Charlton Heston? Okay.
And Moses is running the NRA.
Yes, thank you. Y'all are so helpful. Thank you. Have a talk later. All right. So who knows what Exodus means?
Leave.
Yes. So after church Sunday, we could tell everybody to take your Exodus, right? Yeah. So, or another way of saying Exodus is mass departure, and I think that's probably what we normally think about. So in the book of Exodus, where was the mass departure? Who was leaving?
Israelites.
They were leaving Egypt. Very good. Okay. So Exodus takes its name then from one of the big events that occurs in the course of the book. And so order-wise, I think we all know it is the second book in the Old Testament. Does everybody know that? Okay. Genesis was the first. Exodus is the second. And so what genre is it? Remember our genres?
The what?
Law.
The genre, it's the law, Susan said, yes. Okay, so somebody tell me the 5 books of law. Somebody on Zoom tell me the 5 books of law.
Come on, you Bible scholars.
What's our Bible?
Oh, did you mean someone online?
Yes, I said someone on Zoom. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy.
Very good. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Those are the books of law. So that's the genre. That's the type of book. Okay. And who wrote it? Moses.
Of course we know.
But Moses wasn't there for all of it. Greg, how did Moses know the part he wasn't there for?
Stories were handed down generation to generation, and people memorized the stories.
Yeah.
So he heard them through
Yes.
and then God told him of course,
Yeah.
the first part
So I
of it.
think both. It was divine revelation and the passing on of stories. Okay. Anybody know how many chapters are in Exodus?
50.
Elizabeth Ann does.
Is it?
Oh, in Exodus?
46.
Oh, I
Oh, that
think-
was
I'm
Genesis
sorry.
was 50.
I only knew last time because I read the last chapter of Genesis.
How many is it?
Oh, I don't
I
know.
think it's
I was
65.
thinking,
Am I allowed to look?
Yes, somebody look. We're getting
Five.
together.
40.
40.
It's
Oh.
40.
There are 40 chapters in Genesis, or in Exodus, sorry. And it's actually kind of a half and half book. So the first half is part of the story, and the second half, not exactly, but it kind of moves into a different part of the story. So if we were to look at the timeline, and let me just mention here on the timeline, every resource you look at has different dates. And so I'm using the ones that are in my Life Application Bible, but wherever you look, your dates may not look like that because they didn't actually record the dates on things. They didn't know when they were in that year that they were counting down to when Jesus came. And so all of the dates that you see are estimates. The last time we said that Genesis went through the year 1805, which was when Joseph died. So Exodus picks up where Genesis left off, and it goes through all the way through 1446 BC. But there's kind of like the first chapter covers that period from 1805 to 1526. So you get a one chapter summary of everything that happened between Genesis and Exodus. And it's that the people are still living in Egypt and what's going on with them. And then really once Moses is born starts the real story. So you see starting in chapter 2 then through 40 goes from 1526 to 1446. And you see there the little arch that's on your page 2 that talks about the 12 eras of the Bible, and those eras are from 30 Days to Understanding the Bible. Somebody tell me what era 1 was. It's on the screen.
Creation.
Yep. Okay. What was era number 2?
Patriarchs.
Okay. And now we're in number 3, which is Exodus. And Exodus, the era of Exodus is not just the book of Exodus. There's other books that will be in that era as well. Okay. All right. We cool? I know this is so exciting. All right. The main purpose of the book is to tell the redemption story of Israel becoming a nation of God's people. And so if you look at it, when Exodus started or when Genesis ended, there were like 70 people who went to Egypt, right? And now we're coming out of that where there are hundreds of thousands of people. So they have become a nation. And God is going to use what happens over the course of Exodus to shape them into his people. And so that's the main thrust of that. Does anybody know how long then they were in Egypt? Anybody?
400 years?
How many?
Is it 400?
I think at one point it says it was 430 years to the day between when they got there and when they left. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a
Um,
lot.
Yeah. So it'd been 430 years. And so when we start off the book of Exodus, then you see in chapter 1 the story of what's going on. Are the Israelites happy in Egypt? No.
Not so much.
No. What's happened to them?
They became slaves.
Yes, they're slaves, and they're suffering. Why is it when they moved there 430 years ago, they were people of favor, right? And Pharaoh liked them, and he kind of gave them their own land over in Goshen, and he's like, "Oh, y'all go there," right? What happened in that 430 year time span that caused them to fall out of favor?
Pharaoh saw that
They had new kings or new pharaohs.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Both answers, yes. So they had new king, and it says that the new king didn't remember Joseph,
Mhm.
right? And then Bryce, what else
They
happened?
started getting too much, they started getting too up in population, and the Pharaoh was getting scared they were going to become too powerful.
Yes, because there were so many people that they were seen as a threat to. Very good. Smarty pants over there. All right. So they're getting so big that everybody's getting scared of them, and then Pharaoh passes an order. Does anybody know what the order was?
Kill.
Yes, to kill the babies. And the first thing he said was he told the midwives that when they were delivering the Hebrew babies, if it was a girl, they could let him live, and if it was a boy, they were to kill the baby. But the Hebrews, the midwives did not do that though. And so the scripture says that God was pleased with them because they refused to do what the king told them to do. And so when that didn't work, then Pharaoh passed another order. Do you know what that one was? Still to kill the boys, but they were supposed to throw them in the Nile, right? And so this was his approach. But it almost seemed like the more he did against the Israelites, the more they grew, and the more they thrived as a result. So one of those babies that was supposed to be born in the Nile was named Moses, right? So anybody remember the story of Moses when he was a baby? Stephanie, tell us what happened to Moses.
Well, Moses's sister and mother wanted him to be safe, so they put him in a little papoose, and the daughter walked him down the river, hopefully to find. Were they looking for the princess?
I'm not really sure.
Well, the movie says
Yes.
that. So she just kind of pushed the little papoose, and the princess and all her people were out bathing, and here comes this baby floating up from nowhere, and she wanted a baby, so she got a free baby.
Yeah.
And then she called for a nursemaid. So Moses's mother actually got to be his nursemaid,
Pretty awesome.
but that's not his real name.
Yeah.
Moses was the name that she gave him.
That the princess gave him because it means to draw out of the water, right? It's,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So and who? So you remember his sister's name?
Miriam.
Miriam. Yeah. And so the scripture says that Miriam, the sister, actually offered to the princess to find a Hebrew woman to nurse the baby, and so that's when she went and got her mom. That's a pretty amazing story, isn't it? I think it's a pretty cool story.
It's one of the had to be God stories.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and what that meant then is that Moses grew up in the palace, right? So he grew up with the best of everything, but he was also aware of his roots and who he was, right? Because his mom would have been with him for those first several years as well, too. So one day Moses goes for a walk, and he sees an Egyptian beating up one of the Hebrew slaves. And what does he do?
He kills him.
He kills him, right? And then he found out later that somebody saw him kill him. And then Pharaoh found out, and then Pharaoh set out to kill Moses, right? And so what did Moses do?
The Exodus.
He
Is
ran.
that what you said, Tim?
He fled.
Anyway, yes, he fled. And he fled and he went to Midian, I think it was. And so there he met a woman and started a family with the Midianites, right? Looks like Moses is out of the picture. And then this burning bush thing happens, right? And so God appears to Moses in a burning bush, and what does he tell Moses? To go back to Egypt. And Moses was so excited and he couldn't wait because he loved being a spokesperson.
No.
No.
No, that one is. No, so what happened because he didn't want to go?
Aaron went with him.
Yes, it was Aaron, yeah,
Brother-in-law?
his brother. Yeah. I think it was his brother. Yeah.
Older brother.
Was it his older brother?
I think so.
Yeah. I always think of Aaron being younger. I didn't know that. So anyway, so God says, okay, if you're not willing to go, then Aaron can go with you and he can be your mouthpiece, right? You have to break with your friend. Okay, so Aaron and Moses then make their way back to Egypt, and their goal is to convince Pharaoh to let the Israelites go, right? I know. Stop me if you've heard this one, right? And so one of the things that Moses said is, how are they going to know we're from you? And do you remember what God gave Moses as proof? You need to come up here and teach this class, boy. You're doing so good.
Didn't I teach him Drew?
Yeah, yeah. So what happened to his staff?
He turned it into a snake.
Yes.
And then Pharaoh had his people do the same thing, and Moses' staff that was turned into a snake ate the other snakes.
Yeah. Okay. Did y'all hear that? So the staff turned into a snake.
Sort of.
Okay. So Moses' staff turned into a snake when he threw it down on the ground. But Pharaoh had magicians, and they did the same thing. They all threw their stakes on the ground, and they all turned to snakes too. But then Moses' staff / snake ate the other ones, which is kind of a way of saying my God's bigger than your God, right? So now it's time for them to get serious about getting Pharaoh to let his people go. And I would hate for Stephanie to miss this part because she has a page and a half typed out. So, okay, so we're ready for the 10 plagues. Are y'all ready? All right, here she comes. She's coming back. She had a phone call. She's coming back. All right. So we are ready for the first plague. Stephanie, can you tell us, and if you want to show us, if you have a picture, you can show it to the iPad.
No. Do you want me just to do my summary, or would you like me to read?
Just do your summary.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so this is my picture. Did I show it here?
Yeah, up there.
Hmm.
See if y'all
You
can
see
see
it?
it.
This is my picture.
Alan's coming
Oh,
in.
Alan's coming. Okay.
If it doesn't work over there, I can show it on mine.
Just,
Okay, so
this looks frozen.
Okay.
No, we can see it.
You can see it?
all right, so the first plague is the plague of blood, the demonstration of God's power. Exodus 7:14-25. The plagues were controlled with regard to timing. There was always an announcement that came with that particular plague. The extent spared the Israelite region and intensity. Each plague gradually increased in severity. So the first plague, Exodus 14, states that Pharaoh's heart was unyielding. Unyielding means unlikely to be swayed, not giving into pressure. The Lord instructed Moses what to say to Pharaoh. He said, then take the staff and strike the water of the Nile, turning the water into blood. Then have Aaron stretch out the staff over all the waters of Egypt. So at this time, all the waters, whether they were in wood or ceramic, everything that was water turned to blood. This plague was meant to attack the Egyptian gods, especially the god Hapi, which is the god responsible for the flooding of the Nile. Everything that was water was now blood. All the fish in the Nile died, and the stench was unbearable. No one could go near the water. The Nile was essential to the Egyptian life, and now the Lord had turned the life, which was the Nile River, into death. And this lasted for 7 days. The magicians were able to do the same thing by their secret arts, by turning water into blood, which hardened Pharaoh's heart even more. But the magicians could not reverse the plague. So when they did their magic, it just made it worse. This also served as a punishment for its use in killing the Israelite baby.
Wow. Okay. Good job, Steph. All right. So the first plague was the plague of blood. And here was Pharaoh's response.
I love it. I love it.
I've only heard that 400 times today, but I really like it. Okay. All right. So that was Pharaoh's response. Now, who had plague number 2?
I did. So plague number 2 was frogs. So Exodus 8:1-15. Again, Moses told Aaron to stretch out his rod, and frogs came from every body of water, all the rivers, all the lakes, everything. And once again, Pharaoh's magicians were able to do the same thing. They also caused frogs to come up, which I'm not sure why you would do that. That makes no sense. We have too many frogs, make more frogs. But anyway, eventually it got too much. Pharaoh's magicians couldn't do anything about it. So Pharaoh went to Moses, asked him to pray to his God to have the frogs removed. Moses said, tell me when, so you'll know that it's God. He said tomorrow. Moses prayed and all the frogs died, which again, kind of not great. So Hecate is the god of fertility for Egypt and has a frog head. So this is showing that God is greater than Hecate because only God could remove the frogs. Pharaoh could create them but couldn't remove them.
Cool. And it said that it started to reek because they put all the frogs in piles.
Yes.
I know when I first read it, I'm like, I like frogs, but no, frogs everywhere would be horrible, right? So at first Pharaoh was listening, and then his heart was hardened, and so here's what he said. All right, who has plague number 3? Bryce, tell us about it.
God told Moses to tell Aaron to raise his staff and to smite the dust, and from the dust flew up gnats, and gnats went on all the people and all the animals. And Pharaoh's magicians tried to do the same but could not. And they told Pharaoh, this is the finger of God, and it hardened Pharaoh's heart even more.
So it's getting, they're, like Stephanie said, they were escalating, and now the magicians can't duplicate that, right? And so, so he said, let my people go. And Pharaoh said, all right, who has plague number 4?
Me.
Nathan, okay, what was plague number 4?
Why
Okay,
did the Lord say to Moses, let my people go? There.
But if he says, he had stuff written down. but he
That's okay.
forgot it. He says, I'm fine.
He said, no, I don't want to.
But if you will not,
Don't let
they go.
my people go.
None, the birds will fly. None will fly.
I will then warn of a lie.
swarms of
Swarm of
flies.
flies,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, that's what she said, yeah,
So,
yes. So, and the flies were everywhere except, who knows where the flies were not?
they wasn't on the people of
Israelites.
Israel, of the,
Yeah.
but
They didn't
everybody,
go to,
all the
didn't go to-
Egyptians, they was on the Egyptian and musicians and stuff like that.
but not on the Israelites.
Right.
Very cool. And so, and at one point Pharaoh said, okay, I'll let you go offer sacrifices,
Mhm.
but then come back. And then he said, now pray for me. And so the flies went away, and it says not a single one remained. And yet Pharaoh said,
I'm gonna have to let him watch this.
all right, who has number 5?
I don't know.
Oh, you don't know?
It's fine.
I'm hoping it's you, Ryan.
So, do the thing.
Let me see your picture.
Heel.
Oh. That's a cute cow.
Well, now he's angry.
He's
Oh.
making it cuter now.
Angry cow.
Angry cow. Mad cow. Mad
Now he's
cow.
a dead cow.
Except for the Israelites cows, they were fine.
Yeah. Okay. So all of the livestock of Egypt died, but none of the livestock of Israel died. Thank you for that articulate presentation,
Yeah,
Ryan.
that was
I'm
awesome.
sorry,
And-
I'm they didn't have a home.
It was fun. And still, Pharaoh said,
Yes,
all right. All right. Who has number 6?
I know.
Yeah?
I know.
Is that you?
Yeah, that's a short one.
Yeah, Dan's got boils.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why you see it. You know, the Lord sent Moses down there and go to Pharaoh and get the furnace suit, SOOT, to go and see Pharaoh and tell him all this other stuff and say things and toss it up to heaven in the direction of Pharaoh. And everybody in Egypt, musicians and all, go come up with boils on them, but the people of Israel will not. And, you know, his heart was still hardened at the end of this situation because he keeps on saying, don't do this and this and that.
Yes. So everybody got boils all over their body. And it said that the magicians couldn't stand up and speak because they were covered in boils themselves. So not only could they not duplicate it or undo it, they were falling victim to it. Right.
Ouch.
And even still, Pharaoh's heart was hardened. And he said, okay. All right, who had number 7?
I think somebody from.
Was it me?
I think it might have been.
Okay, good. That was the one I read, but I couldn't remember if it was 7 or 8. So the 7th plague was a hailstorm or thunder and hail. And it says that all the officials who feared the Lord took their servants and their livestock out of the elements and hid, put them somewhere safe. But the people that didn't fear the Lord just left them out there. And so all the people and the livestock and the, was it grain or whatever they were growing in the field, it just says plants of the field, were destroyed. And then Moses went out and stopped it. And the Pharaohs, well, you're going to tell us what the Pharaoh said.
Yeah. But again, there was no hail in Goshen where the Israelites were. So it was just in the areas where the Egyptians were.
Yeah.
And at that point, Pharaoh said, I've sinned and I'm going to let you go. And so remember, Moses left town, went to the town and prayed, and the storm stopped. And so then Pharaoh changed his mind again and said, that's the cutest little helper ever. Okay. All right. Who has number 8?
I have number 8.
Oh,
This is the performer we have. He drew this picture of an artist's rendition of the locusts.
Greg really drew it. He just
We're
doesn't
not sure
want us
if
to know
this
that.
is what they may have looked like.
Well, Greg drew it. He
That's
changed
Good
colors.
job.
Anyway, God had hardened Pharaoh's heart once again, and he had also hardened the heart of his officials. And so he had Moses and Aaron go to Pharaoh and, tell them about this plague, this 8th plague of locusts that was going to come. So he came, told them, told that story to the Pharaoh and his officials. And then Pharaoh said, okay, get out of here. Then his officials said, hey, this is getting out of hand. Even though their hearts had been hardened after they hear about this 8th plague, they're telling Pharaoh, hey, you got to just let them go. So they called him back into his chambers again, calls Moses and Aaron back. And he said, okay, who is it? Pharaoh says, who is it you're wanting to take with you? You want to take, and they said, we want to take everybody, our livestock, everything. We're going to head out and go worship the Lord. He said, no, you can take just the men only. Now get out of here. So after that, he waved his staff again, and here come the locusts, and they ate everything, right down to the ground, every crop, everywhere. So they called him back in, and east wind had brought the locusts in. He said, please, you can do whatever you want to. Take your people, whatever, just please get rid of the locusts. So a west wind blew them out to the Red Sea. And of course, after they were gone, then Pharaoh's, there you go.
That's Pharaoh. All right. Thank you, Greg. That was good. And I like it said that the ground was black. It was so covered with locusts. Because we get locusts and they're annoying, but not like that, right? And they were on everything. And so it was a big difference. All right. Who had number 9?
I did. the ninth plague of darkness. I have an image of it here.
It looks red.
Yeah, it went red for some reason. For 3 days, God blotted out the sun and the ability of anybody but Israelis to even seeing light.
Oh, wow.
So while the Israelis are in their huts and houses, their lamps would show light, but no one else's.
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
That is
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah. Very cool.
Even the flashlights didn't.
So they basically blinded, they basically blinded everybody who wasn't from Israel.
So Pharaoh told them they could go
Oh.
worship too, right?
A darkness that you can feel. It's one of the phrases in the Bible.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Pretty dark.
That's pretty. It's hard for us to relate to that dark because most of us, we have city lights around.
So you go to a cave.
Yeah. Yeah. True that. Okay. All right. So then Pharaoh said that they could go worship, but they had to leave the livestock behind, and which would be their way of coming back, right? Because that was their wealth. And so Moses was like, no, that's not going to work. And so once again, and even beyond that, Pharaoh then said, don't ever come before me again. And so Pharaoh was done at that point. And then comes the 10th plague. And Bill, are you still with us? You got to unmute.
I'm here.
Okay, tell us about the 10th plague.
10th plague was the angel of death was going to pass over Egypt and take the firstborn from Pharaoh all the way down to his servant girl who ran the mill. But what was I going to say? God was very specific when he gave them instructions about this plague. He told the Israelites to go to their neighbor and ask their neighbor for gold and silver. And he also told Moses that month was going to become the first month of their year. And he told them to pick a lamb or goat, and it had to be perfect, no blemishes or no flaws. And he was very specific as to how they were going to cook it. They were supposed to roast it over fire, and they could not boil it, and they could not cook it any other way, and they could not have none of it could be raw. It had to be completely cooked all the way through, right even to the insides. But then they were to take the blood of the lamb and take a hyssop branch and mark on the sides and over their doorpost. So the angel of death would pass over them. The angel of death took the firstborn of everyone whose doorpost was not marked, and it even took the firstborn of the cattle and the livestock. That's all I have.
But what happened to the firstborn of the Israelites?
Nothing.
Nothing. Yeah. And so that was the angel of death passed over their homes as long as it was painted with the lamb's blood, right?
Right.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. And so after that, what did Pharaoh say?
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Go.
I don't have a recording of that. That would have been cute too. We just have Dola saying that. Go, I'm done. Right? It said that there was wailing in the land. I mean, you know how hard it is to lose a loved one. And for every household in Egypt to have lost someone, it was, that was just the last straw. And so Pharaoh said to go. And when they left, there were 600,000 men, plus women and children. And so that group of 70 had grown into probably over 2 million people is what they estimate. And so so they're running away then, and they took all of their wealth with them because a lot of the Egyptians had given them gold and silver because God caused them to find favor, right? And so here they go, and so then they cross the Red Sea. I don't have a visual for that, but so they all go across the Red Sea, and then Pharaoh changes his mind again, right? And so all the army goes after him because he sends the army after him to get them. And what happened to the army?
They got swallowed by the Red Sea.
They got swallowed up by the Red Sea. That's right. So because the Israelites all passed, and then the army came after them, and the sea closed over them so that the Israelites were safe. All right. Very cool. After that, then they're entering the wilderness, and it's that part that's called the Sinai Peninsula, you know, where the Sinai is kind of between Egypt and Israel. If you were to look on the map, that's where they were. And God showed them where to go. He led them. Do you remember what he led them by in the daytime?
Pillar of cloud and pillar of fire.
Yes, a pillar of cloud in the daytime and a pillar of fire at night, right? And so that's how he guided them where they wanted to go. And then I have the next part is that there were whiners wandering in the desert, in the wilderness. Anybody remember what they were whining about?
I need some
Everything.
food. I need
Everything.
some meat. I need this. I
Yeah.
need that.
It was
They-
better in Egypt.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
We'd been better off if we just stayed there, right?
Yeah.
It was only 3 days into the wilderness after God had parted the Red Sea miraculously and done all of these things. And 3 days in, they're like, oh, we should have just stayed in Egypt and died because we're so thirsty. And so God gave them water. And the water that was near there was bitter, and Moses threw a branch into it. And when that happened, the water turned sweet and they could drink it. And then he sent manna. What's manna?
Bread.
Yeah, we think of it like bread. It actually means manna. The word manna means, what is this, right? So it was some kind of substance that was enough for them to eat. And then he sent quail so that they would have meat as well. Yeah,
I thought it had protein.
I'm sure it had everything they needed. Yeah, it was like one of those really super cool protein shakes, but in a
With Ninja.
yeah, with Ninja Red in it. Yeah, there you go.
It probably had gluten in it, everything.
Yeah. So did they stop whining?
No.
No, they still were whining, right? They were such whiners. Yeah. So, okay. And then along the way, along their travels, they encounter the Amalekites. And does anybody remember the story of the Amalekites? Yes, Bryce knows. He's showing us the arms lifted. So as they were fighting the Amalekites, as long as Moses had his hands in the air, they were victorious. But if his hands came down, then they started losing, right?
Eventually, Aaron and I can't. Was it Joshua? Had to help him put his hands, keep him up.
It was Aaron and somebody else, because you know what Joshua was
Oh yeah,
doing?
he was leading.
Joshua was leading. Remember, Joshua was victorious in that
He was
battle.
leading the battle.
Yeah.
It was Aaron and her.
Aaron and her. I kept thinking Ben, her. I was like, yeah, Aaron and her. All right. And then it says Jethro. Somebody online tell me who Jethro is.
Moses's father-in-law.
Yes.
Is
Yes.
that right?
Yes. And what did he do? Do you remember what he did, Elizabeth Ann, at that point in the story?
Nope.
Isn't that where he suggests to Moses to appoint some elders or something to help him out?
Yes. Way to go, Pastor Ron. Look at
Oh,
you.
wow.
Yeah. Because Moses was like worn out, right? And so Moses said, you need a Ron and an Elizabeth Ann, okay? And so he taught him how to delegate, right? And so I just love that little part of the story because I think that was wisdom. And God sent Moses' father-in-law to share wisdom with him so that he wouldn't wear out. All right. That's kind of the first half of Exodus. It's the first 18 chapters. And when we get to chapter 19, then we see it's been 3 months since they've been in the desert. And I wondered if I could have a reader who would like to read the verses that are there on the screen.
Oh, don't read the screen, read the verse.
Read the actual verses.
I got it.
Okay, Bryce, read verses 3 through 6 first. Don't read 8 yet.
19, right?
Yes.
Then Moses went up to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain and said, "This is what you are to say to the descendants of Jacob, and what you are to tell to the people of Israel. You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites."
Yeah.
So Moses went back and summoned the elders of the people and set before them all the words the Lord had commanded him to speak. The people all responded together, "We will do everything the Lord has said." So Moses brought their answer back to the Lord.
All right. So the people said, yes, we'll do what you ask, right?
Mhm.
And then that brings us to the 10 Commandments. Okay. In the interest of time, we're just going to read through the 10 Commandments, okay? Instead of assigning them out, all right? The first one, somebody read that one.
I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt. You shall have no other gods before me.
Very cool. All right. Number 2, you can read it off the screen. You don't have to look it up. in
Oh,
your
I'm
Bible.
sorry.
You shall not make for yourself an idol.
Okay, don't make idols.
You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God.
Remember the Sabbath and keep it holy.
Thank you.
Okay.
Honor your father and mother.
Thank you. Number 6.
You shall not murder.
Thank you.
You shall not commit adultery.
Nathan, you got that one?
You shall not steal.
Yes, thank you. Wayne, can you get that one?
And you shall not give false testimony.
Yes, which is another way of saying don't lie.
Don't lie.
right?
No perjury allowed.
And number 10,
You shall not covet.
thank you. All right, good job. So those were the basic 10 Commandments, right? That God gave to the people. And he also, if you keep reading that section, gave them rules about altars and festivals and how to treat people and how to take care of property and observe a Sabbath and all of that. And so Moses took all of that and wrote it down in the Book of the Covenant. And he also built an altar. And then God invited Moses and 70 of the elders up to the mountain to worship. And it says that they went up part of the way up the mountain and they dined with God. Wouldn't that be an awesome thing to do?
Mhm.
To dine with God. God's going to be at the food truck. All right. So then Moses and Joshua go further up the mountain to meet with God. And it's while they're there that they receive the 10 Commandments on the stone tablets. And God carved them there himself. They stayed up there for 40 days and 40 nights. And the scripture said that to those who were still on the ground, the mountaintop looked like a consuming fire. And so what do you think they thought happened to Moses?
He was gone.
They thought he'd been
Burned
consumed
up.
in the fire, right? But while he was there, God was giving Moses requirements for the tabernacle and the priests. And what he's doing in that is saying, this is how we're going to set up a place where I can dwell with you and be there to when my people worship, to be among them. And then he says, okay, now you got to go back down. And this is chapter 32, because there's a ruckus going on down there, right? And so when he got down to the bottom of the mountain, do you remember what he found?
They were worshiping
Partying.
idols, golden cows.
Yeah. Yeah,
Party!
they were having a party and they had made an idol, a golden calf. Do you remember what it was made out of?
Gold.
Where'd they get
Gold.
Where'd they
It
get
was
the
the gold
gold?
they got from Egypt.
The jewelry from Egypt.
Yes, the jewelry from Egypt. It was their earrings. Everybody had earrings apparently. and they said once Aaron helped shape the idol, and then after he did that, the people worshipped it and said, "These are the gods who brought us out of Egypt." And so they really were worshiping the golden calf that they had just made. And so God thought about destroying the people of Israel. Why didn't he destroy them?
Because he had made a
Moses talked him out
promise.
of it.
Yeah, Moses talked him out of it. And so, but was Moses was really okay with the whole idol thing? No.
No.
He threw didn't he throw the tablets down? They broke.
Yeah, he did. So he threw the tablets down. He was so angry that he threw the tablets down and they broke. And then he took the golden idol, and it said he melted it down and turned it into powder. And he put that powder into the water and made people drink it as a part of their punishment. And then the Levites went through the festival killing people as well. So on that day, 3,000 people died at the hand of the Levites. And then God sent a plague and took out more of them because of their worshiping of idols. Okay. So God took it pretty seriously, didn't he? But then he forgave them, right? All right. And so during this time, Moses would go into what he called the tent of meeting, which was a tent that he had set up away from the other people. And he would go into that tent and meet with God. And that was a pretty cool thing. And then God asked Moses to come back to the mountaintop again. And this time Moses was to chisel out the tablets, the shape of the tablets. And then he took them up and God wrote on those tablets again. And when God was meeting with Moses on the mountaintop, that's when Moses said, I want to see your glory. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And so God said, come on up and I have a place where you can stand. And it was in the cleft of the mountain, and God passed by. But Moses still wasn't allowed to see the face of God, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that was an awesome experience. But while he was there, God renewed his covenant with the people of Israel. And he said that he would still be their God. And so that's why he gave Moses the tablets again. So Moses was able to go back down the mountain then with the new commandments written on the tablets. And that was a pretty cool thing.
Yep.
Then, and also, then the last six chapters of Exodus are the Israelites setting up the tabernacle according to God's directions that he had given them. And so it goes into a lot of detail about what went into the tabernacle itself and the furnishings that were inside and what the priests wore and who made those things, because God gifted craftsmen to come alongside and make the things that were commanded. And all of that was to get the tabernacle prepared so that God could come and dwell among them. Because way back when they were first hearing from God on the mountain, it scared the people, and they said, we don't want to hear God talk. You do it, Moses. We'll stay out here, right? And so it's kind of cool that God is going to all this great length in order to be close to his people. And that's what the tabernacle would accomplish, because they would take it with them everywhere they went. And inside the tent, and inside that tent was the Ark of the Covenant, and God would dwell on top of that ark. Cool. And so that brings us to the end. I need another reader to read Exodus 40 verses 34 through 38.
Then the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Moses could not enter the tent of meeting because the cloud had settled on it, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Am I reading the right place?
Mm-hmm. That's the very end of it, right?
How far am I?
38. Did you go to verse 38?
In all the travels of the Israelites, whenever the cloud lifted from above the tabernacle, they would set out. But if the cloud did not lift, they would not set out until the day is lifted. So the cloud of the Lord was over the tabernacle by day, and fire was in the cloud by night, in the sight of all the Israelites during all their travels.
So God was with them once again.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what are the lessons that we learned from Exodus? I wrote down a few that I thought of, and y'all can tell me if you think of some different ones, okay? The first lesson I learned is that God hears. Because if you go back to the very beginning of the story, and the people were suffering, and God said, I have heard their cries, and I have seen how they suffer. And he responds to that by rescuing his people. And so in doing so, he shows that he is a God of redemption, right? They were enslaved and he got them back out of slavery. And the next thing we learned is that God desires a covenant relationship with his people. And so a covenant is a binding agreement. It's two-sided. He didn't want to force himself to be their God. He gave them the option. I want to be your God, and I want you to be my people. And then the people would respond by saying, you remember you read that, Bryce? We agree to everything, right? We agree to be your people. And so God has always been desirous of this kind of mutual relationship with his people, rather than forcing a relationship with them. The next thing I noticed is that the law was given to guide people towards holiness. So the law was not meant to be a means of punishing people. It was a means of bringing them closer to God, and also of showing the rest of the world what it looks like to be blessed when you do things God's way. All right? That becomes even more important later on, doesn't it? Next, we learn that sin has consequences, right? So even when the people messed up, there was always a consequence, right? Even when Moses murdered a guy, the consequence was he had to leave and go to Midian, right? I mean, every sin has a consequence. And when people as a whole sin, there is a large scale consequence for sin. But also what that tells us then is that there is a sacrifice required. And so we didn't really look at the altars and the sacrifices that God required when the people were sorry, but those are in there as well. And that's a concept that will carry on through the whole Bible. Sin always has a consequence. It separates us from God, and this sacrifice is required in order to get back to God. And then when you do that, the next lesson is that God forgives, okay? Because, I mean, this is a whiny bunch of people, and the minute that Moses' back was turned, they're making their own idol after God just said, don't do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it's easy to look at the Israelites and think, man, they messed up so bad all the time. But God still forgave them, right? So there were consequences, but there was also forgiveness.
I think that's the main thing that, that was the first thing that popped into my head, because after all of that, he still forgave them.
He still
wants them to be his people.
Yeah. Pretty amazing. And tells us a lot about the character of God, I guess. And then I think the other point I had was that God chooses to dwell with his people. He went to great lengths to be with them. And that just says a lot about the heart of God, doesn't it? He didn't just happen upon people, and he didn't just, well, whatever, if you want to be mine, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
He pursued them, and he gave them a plan and showed them how to build a tabernacle where he could dwell. And I mean, and I think that's a pretty amazing God right there.
Amen.
That out of all the people in the world, he chooses to dwell with these people. Anybody else have other lessons or thoughts?
No.
Thank you, Nathan.
They heard you in Texas.
All right. Here's my next question. Where do you see Jesus in Exodus?
Well, he was the clouds that covered them whenever they were, by the day it shielded them from the sun, and then the fire by night that helped keep them warm, and it guided them through that wilderness.
Thank you, Violet. Yeah. Where else?
A child born under threat of death, under persecution, that was then raised by parents who are arguably not his own to achieve a great destiny.
Oh, wow. I didn't even have that one written down. I don't know if y'all can hear that. Ryan has a mask on, but he said that a child was born under persecution and threatened with death. So that same how all the baby boys were thrown in the Nile, then we see with Jesus where all they were ordered to be killed during that time.
He was also raised in the enemy's camp.
Yeah.
The ones he had to be delivered from and had to learn a new language and everything. That's amazing. That was good, Ryan.
Good job. All right, where else do we see Jesus?
The lamb's blood over the doorpost.
Yes. So the lamb had to be sacrificed, right? And so that was called the Passover lamb.
Sacrificial.
And that's why Jesus is often called the Passover lamb, right? Because the sacrifice was required in order to protect God's people. Very good. What else?
Well, His grace and His mercy whenever He wrote the laws one time, and then the laws, Jesus He came to fulfill the law, but I mean, he did it again. We messed up. I already messed up. He gave them laws. They already messed up. He did them again. Grace, grace, grace. It's just all through that. Redemption.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. And I think, and another thing is the concept of sacrifice being required for forgiveness, because we see that established as a part of the law for God's people, that when you do wrong, you show repentance through your sacrifices. And that says something about your heart, right? And so when Jesus came, He took the place of that. So He became the sacrifice so that we could be forgiven. When we accept His sacrifice for ourselves, then we come into God's forgiveness. And without having Exodus and all of those laws and things, it would be really hard to understand why it was necessary for Jesus to die. And so there's the concept of sacrifice there.
Another place where Jesus was covering the Israelites when they were in Goshen from all the plagues.
Yes.
He protected them.
So how God's people were protected even when all the bad stuff was going on. Okay. And then I finished with God's
Maybe not
desire to
completely
dwell.
protected,
Yeah.
but at least somewhat.
They still needed to be rescued.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
They were still around it. They still smelled the frogs, dealt with locusts.
They were still slaves.
They were still slaves.
Yeah. And I think Jesus is the ultimate example of God desiring to dwell with His people too, because He actually came here to dwell with us. Any other thoughts on that?
Manna doesn't keep.
Manna does not keep. No hoarding. We should really go back to this again, right? They were not allowed to hoard the manna. That's such an important lesson. And isn't that a lesson for us too, though, that God provides every day and every step of the way, and He will give us exactly what we need. All right, so every week, my goal is to give you a memory verse to think about that kind of represents each of our chapter of our books. And for Exodus, I chose 20 verse 2. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. And God still brings us slavery, doesn't He?
Amen.
Yeah. Cool. All right, let me see if I can hear. Not, that's not it. Okay. There's everybody. Cool. All right, any other thoughts, observations, favorite stories I left out? Everybody feel like you have a good grasp on Exodus? We preached all the way through Exodus not too long ago. And so I was really surprised at my ability to forget what happens and in what order. And so I think this is a helpful thing to do, to look at it in that order. So, all right, I'm going to pick somebody to pray for us. Pastor Ron, would you be willing to pray for us before we leave tonight?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I just thank you for today, and I thank you for everyone that's gathered here to learn about you, God. I ask that as we go about our weeks, that you would protect us and keep us safe, that you would give us a good week. And Lord, I just ask that you would keep your Spirit upon us, that we can glorify you in everything we do and say and think. In your name we pray, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you to everybody for participating, and especially those of you who brought your plagues. And Tim is
Brought
going to
your
be leading our
plagues.
class next week
Woohoo!
in Leviticus. So study up and ask him lots of questions. I'm just kidding.
Good.
All right. All right.
Tim,
we'll
have homework
miss you guys.
for us?
We don't have homework, do we? Tim?
No.
No? Okay. We'll be good. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
Bye, everyone.
Sunday.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, we can bring her.
You put it in the Bible.